Shen Qianwu grew up naked in the Yanzhou military camp, and was always the most reluctant to see the delicate young lady with 3 steps, 1 leg, 1 weakness, and 5 steps, her waist and limbs sore. It wasn't until one day that the 4th legitimate young lady of the Su Yushi family returned to Bianjing, where a startled swan caught a glimpse of her from the dock and immediately looked into her heart. However, this little girl looked at a cute little fox full of bad water, with a clever mouth, and a young lady full of Bianjing. She scolded anyone who was unhappy, even more powerful than the prickly rose. How can one keep getting used to this temperament? With a delicate smile, the rough man also softened his heart and bent his waist. One pet is a lifetime. Keywords of the novel. Jiao smile, the rough man bends over for the beauty without a pop-up window. Jiao smile, the rough man bends over for the beauty. Complete collection download of TXT. Jiao smile, the rough man bends over for the beauty. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Return to Beijing. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 1. Return to Beijing. In the spring of the 2nd year of Jianning, just after the end of January, the weather in early February is still cold and cool. On the canal outside Bianjing city, 2 large boats set sail and were slowly sailing towards the dock, taking advantage of the water and wind on the river surface. On the deck, a cool breeze mixed with a hint of dampness rushed towards Su Juning's face. She was breathing in fresh air, and the feeling of stuffiness in her chest eased a lot. Lift your eyes and look towards the shore. The crowded dock was particularly lively, just like when she left. She and her second sister Su Zi were sent to Linen by their father at a time when the king of Yan was about to invade Bianjing and people were in great turmoil. At that time, there were people on the dock who wanted to avoid the war and escape by boat, but now, wherever they can see, there is a peaceful atmosphere. This indicates that the king of Yan, oh no, is now Emperor Jianning. He is still more capable than his brother. Last autumn, my second sister was taken back to Bianjing due to her marriage. At that time, she wanted to come with her, but unfortunately, my father said that the emperor had just ascended the throne and the situation in the capital was unstable, so there was no need to return to the capital. Even this spring, in just over 3 months, it was her big day with her hair, and her father sent someone to pick her up. Although it was a boat trip, she was afraid that she wouldn't get used to it on the way, so the arrangements on the boat were very delicate. The furniture of pure yellow pear wood, including screens, soft beds, vases, and incense burners, were all arranged according to her usual boudoir. But the journey from Linen to Bianjing is far away, and she has been floating on the water for several days. She still inevitably gets seasick, and at this moment, her head is still a bit groggy. Drive. Drive. If you offend me, make way. The noisy tap sound came from the shore, interrupting Su Juning's thoughts. Following the sound, he looked up to the shore and saw 3 or 4 brown horses galloping from the east. The man led by him, dressed in a dark official uniform, flipped over his clothes and relied on his excellent riding skills. He was not afraid of the crowds and narrow roads at the dock, and rode his horse through the dense crowd. He suddenly pulled the reins and drank in a low voice. Sigh. The horse beneath him snorted and raised its front hooves, seeming to be as bold as its owner. The man dismounted and threw the whip to the person behind him. He frowned and impatiently rolled up his sleeve. What a damn trouble. These sleeves are as thick as my grandfather's waist. Obviously, the man was very dissatisfied with the style of the official uniform. As he rolled up his sleeves, the man's gaze swept around the dock and saw the ship unloading cargo, so he strode over. He walked fast, and the ground at the dock was damp and muddy. The mud splashed from his feet was all on the hem and shoe upper of his official robe, but the man seemed unaware. Su Juning couldn't help frowning as he was observing him on the ship. The previous one was an official ship of the court, no wonder the ships at the back were waiting first. Shen Qianwu was unaware that a delicate lady was looking at him from a distance, and at that moment, she was talking to Kuai Bushao as he approached the bow of the boat. The things on the official ship are goods from the Ministry of War's Yamen, which he received today for inspection. After a few words, he entrusted the task of counting goods to his attendants, and found a place for the dock porter to rest. He crossed his legs and waited to go. Su Juning couldn't bear to look at this image of the bandits in the gang, so he frowned and turned back into the cabin. After 2 sticks of incense, the cargo ship cleared and left the port, and the Su family's ship slowly docked. And Zheng Han also returned with the bill of lading. Boss, the goods have been counted and there is no problem. We have already had them loaded onto a truck and sent to the Ministry of War as soon as possible. He reported on the progress of his work, but Shen Qianwu's gaze did not fall on him, but instead crossed over him and looked back. Zheng Han turned around in confusion and saw a spacious and luxurious carriage parked on the dock at some point. A group of women, servants were neatly arranged on both sides of the carriage, waiting quietly for someone. Looking further ahead, on the boat docked at the shore, a young girl was being crowded off the boat by maids. The girl lightly supported the maid's arm with one hand, and slightly lifted the hem of her skirt with the other. Although she was wearing a thick coat and skirt, her waist and limbs were still soft, like Lu Fufeng, as she walked. The delicate melon seed face had a slightly soft and sweet smile, willow eyebrows were as black as dye, and a pair of peach blossom eyes were sparkling and agile. The tail of the eyes seemed to have a faint blush, like a blush dyed after getting drunk, charming but not seductive. Xiong has a pretty nose, rosy lips, and pink cheeks that look like peach blossoms blooming in spring, even slightly coquettish. There are many beauties in Kyoto, and Shen Qianwu has seen many of them since coming here for over a year. Today, this is the first time she has seen them. It looks good, it's really good, Shen Qianwu was amazed. Which one is from? Shen Qianyun pressed his tongue against his left cheek and asked casually. Zheng Han withdrew his gaze and looked at him with ill intentions. If you want to know what other girls are doing, go ask them yourself. Upon hearing this, Shen Qianwu stared at him with a smile on her face for a while before suddenly lifting her foot and kicking him in the calf. Did I give you a damn face? Oh my! Zheng Han exclaimed in pain, limping and taking a step back. After getting further away from him, he dared to give him a resentful look. Hitting someone again, I can't change my habit of being hands-on anymore. With his words, Shen Qianying withdrew his crossed legs and was about to raise his arms. Zheng Han immediately put his hands together in a gesture of begging for mercy, and then turned around to observe the group of people beside the carriage. Seeing the wooden sign hanging on the carriage with the character Su written on it, my heart was clear. It's from the left censor of the inspectorate, Zheng Han replied. Shen Qianwen passed the lengthy title of the official position in his mind, his eyes darkened. Then he licked his lips and whispered. The Su family. That's right, that's the only Su family in Kyoto that can have this kind of extravagance. Beside him, Zheng Han was still explaining. Su Yushi had 2 young ladies under his command, one was the second young lady Su Zi, born to his original wife, and the other was the 4th young lady born to the Chui family. I forgot her name, but there is indeed news that Miss Su is about to give birth. Su Yushi sent someone to the old house in Linen to bring her back to Bianjing for a wedding. I believe this is the one. As he spoke, Shen Qianwu had already watched as Su Juning boarded the carriage and slowly left. After he explained, he saw his own boss looking at him with a look of disdain. Why are you babbling? You know more than matchmaker Wang. Zheng Han gritted his teeth and said to himself, you asked me before you said it. If you ask me, I don't know, and I have to endure it for a while. Can you not go around and listen more in your daily life? But these words can only be suppressed in his heart, he doesn't want to be beaten. Shen Qianwu didn't care what his subordinates were thinking, so he stood up and turned his neck. Let's go back and report. Zheng Han nodded and led the horses of the 2, each flipping over. As the galloping horse passed by the carriage, Su Juning was lifting a corner of the car window curtain to see the street outside when he coincidentally met Shen Qianwu's gaze, who seemed to have unintentionally looked at the carriage. That were a pair of sharp eyes, scrutinizing without anger or arrogance. The bridge of the nose was straight and high, and the lips were slightly pursed without any curvature. This gaze made Su Juning feel like a prey being targeted by a wolf, but before she could react, she had already galloped past, leaving only the smoke and dust from the hooves of a horse in front of her. Su Juning felt a bit inexplicable. After a moment of confusion, she put down the car curtain and didn't have the mood to look anymore. One pair of clean and sweet pet articles, with an empty background and a female lead wearing baby clothes. The entire text is fictional, and do not compare it with history. New and old readers who like it are welcome to enter the pit. Thank you for your support and love you all. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Su Family. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Su Family. Half an hour later, the carriage stopped outside the Su family's mansion. Before Su Juning could get off the car, she could hear her mother's voice. Ninger. Chui's excited voice had a hint of crying. Su Yi stepped forward and helped his wife. Madam, don't worry, the carriage hasn't stopped yet. And Su Juning in the car was also excited. She quickly got off the car and rushed straight into Chui's arms. Mother, my daughter misses you so much. I haven't seen my daughter for a year and a half, and now Chui is choking up. My mother also wants to be Ninger. Let me see if she has grown taller or lost weight, she said, carefully examining Su Juning's whole body before sighing. They have all grown into big girls. Remembering that she had not been able to accompany her daughter for over a year, Chui's eyes turned red once again. Su Yi next to him was also very happy when he saw his little daughter. But as a man, he still needs to be more reserved and introverted in emotional expression. With a smile, he touched Su Juning's head and said, Ninger has grown a lot and is almost catching up with Ziyi. Do you miss your father? I feel restless, I'm starving and losing weight. Su Jun reluctantly grabbed her father's arm and acted coquettishly. Su Yi likes his little daughter's ghostly and elf-like appearance, and his smile becomes even stronger for a moment. With a wave of his hand, he said, then hurry up and have your meal. Today, I specifically asked the bakery to cook your favorite dishes. You must eat more. Su Juning nodded with a smile and called out to the nearby brothers and sisters. Big brother, third brother, second sister, let's all go in quickly. After speaking, he walked into the mansion door, holding his parents' arms one by one. Miss Su Ziyi looked at Su Juning's back, her eyes flickering, and then followed with a cold face. The eldest son Su Yuan looked at his younger sister's unhappy expression and sighed, then greeted his third brother Su Yuan, and the two brothers followed suit. A leisurely lunch that followed the wind and washed away the dust can be considered a delightful end. Then everyone sat in the flower hall drinking tea, and Su Juning called on Nan Su to bring out all the gifts she had prepared for her family. What Su Yi received was a genuine landscape painting by a famous artist. Su Yi is a civil servant who loves books, calligraphy, and painting the most. This gift is very pleasing to him, and he immediately couldn't put down the painting his youngest daughter gave him. Subsequently, Su Juning gave Chui a set of popular facial masks from linen. The gift from her own daughter is naturally good, and Chui sure also has a strong smile. Immediately after, Su Juning took out a pair of high-quality colored glazed vases and ordered Nan Su to deliver them to Su Ziyi. This is for second sister. When I was in linen before, I saw that second sister liked it, so I bought it for second sister. Su Ziyi saw the vase in front of her, and a glimmer of light shone in her eyes, but she immediately suppressed it. With a faint expression, he said, I didn't like it much either. It's rare that fourth sister still remembers. Thank you very much. Su Yuxuan, who was standing beside her, couldn't bear to see her sister's coldness, so she spoke up and tried to smooth things out. Ziyi has always been fond of porcelain. This vase has a delicate style and bright color, and I like it even when I look at it. Su Yuan quickly followed suit and said, yes, both the second and fourth sisters have good looks. The third son is the only illegitimate one in the family, unlike his eldest son Su Yushi. He speaks more like a bowl of water, neither side offends. Big brother and third brother both have them, don't be greedy. Su Juning smiled and took out all the things she had given them. This hot-blooded appearance seems to be completely indifferent to Su Ziyi's intentional neglect just now. Su Yuqian and Su Yuan received gifts and both smiled and thanked each other. After sitting in the front hall for half an hour, everyone dispersed. Su Juning held her mother's arm and the two of them went to the Canyu pavilion where she lived, affectionately and affectionately. They are all arranged according to your favorite style, and the utensils in the room have been replaced with new ones, but we haven't made new clothes for you yet. However, we have bought all the fabrics and are waiting to measure them. We will invite someone to come to the house another day, Chui said with a soft smile. She gave birth to such a daughter, who is more precious than anything else. Su Juning sat down with her mother and said, it's not a big deal. I only remember if my mother has had a good year. I see you've lost weight. You are alone in linen, why doesn't my mother miss you? Chui sighed and reached out to touch her face. Bianjing has just stabilized. Your father and I can't bear to see you alone in linen, and we're worried about not being able to pick you up. Why did your mother say this? Su Juning was puzzled. Looking at her daughter, who was as delicate as a flower, Chui's sorrow grew stronger in her eyes. The emperor intends to ease the relationship between the new and old factions of ministers, allowing the high-ranking families in the court to promote officials from humble backgrounds. Starting from last year, many ministers' families in the court have been given marriages, and now it seems that he also intends to point out your second sister to the legitimate second son of his uncle, Duke Rui. Chui said in a low voice. Upon hearing these words, Su Juning's eyebrows furrowed. If it were for this purpose, Su Ziyi's marriage would not have completely become a political tool. With this understanding, she understood in her heart that what Chui Shi was saying was also afraid of not being good. So my mother is worried that after I reach the hairpin ceremony, the emperor may also have an idea of me. There are only so many unmarried men and women of appropriate age in Bianjing. If Emperor Jianing really wants to resolve the conflict between the two factions of ministers through this means, it is indeed possible. Although this move harms others, it is beneficial to Emperor Jianing. Not long after he ascended the throne, the instability of the court was not a good thing, and the simplest way to make the two factions shake hands and make peace was to bind their interests together, and marriage was an extremely useful means. What a dead friend, never a poor one. Su Juning can't help but complain bitterly from the bottom of her heart. Chui nodded and looked melancholic as she mentioned someone. Do you still remember the young lady of the Qin family, Marquis Jingchang? Remember, Qin Wan, the legitimate granddaughter of Marquis Jingchang, has a good relationship with her second sister. Su Juning looked at her mother. She was ordered to marry by the emperor. Last year, she married the newly appointed commander of the Bianjing Guard, the legitimate eldest son of Lord Wu. After marrying, the couple did not reconcile, and her husband was newly married and took a concubine. Angry, she had a small fortune. Chui's tone was filled with pity and sympathy, and after a pause, he said again. In my opinion, whether it's getting married under the same family background or matching, both parties are reluctant, and there are always more women who suffer, especially those from mismatched backgrounds. Like Miss Qin and the Wu family, their conversations are not harmonious, and the couple is not harmonious. This statement is reasonable. After all, the growth environment is different, the three perspectives are different, and they are forcibly bound together. How can they be harmonious? Su Juning lowered her eyes and remained silent. It's another day of fear of marriage. Seeing her daughter seem to be feeling down, Chui immediately realized that she had said too much. Then he took Su Juning's hand and patted it. Don't think too much, Mom just loves to ponder. With your father around, your marriage won't have too many problems. I'm saying these things to remind you to be careful everywhere when you return to Beijing. Moreover, your second sister has been in a bad mood lately and has become a bit cold. Don't take it to heart. Su Juning curled her lips and nodded, feeling that Su Ziyi had always been cold and accustomed to it. Don't worry, mother. I remember everything. Su Juning coquettishly grabbed Chui's arm and leaned over. Chui Shi lovingly touched her daughter's head and suddenly remembered something. She supported Su Juning's shoulder and let her sit upright again. By the way, a few days ago, Lady Rui of the Kingdom of Rui submitted a post. Her mansion held a poetry meeting and invited many people, including unmarried young masters and ladies. Your second sister is going, and since you have returned, let's go together. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Poetry Society. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Poetry Society. Adding unmarried men and women to poetry is equivalent to blind dates. Su Juning, who had just been immersed in the fear of marriage, immediately felt a hint of unwillingness on her charming face upon hearing this. Before she could refuse, Chui patted her hand and coaxed softly. Ninger, listen to your mother's words. You are about to reach the age of hair, and it is also the age to discuss marriage. If you can meet someone you like early, it will save you many nightmares. This night-long dream naturally refers to the marriage bestowed by Emperor Jianing. With reason and evidence, Su Juning could only nod in agreement. Qing felt something was wrong again and asked, the emperor intends to marry, and the young masters of the duke's mansion have already settled down. How can we still hold this poetry meeting? The surname of the Duke of Rui is Su, and he has 2 sons and a daughter. His eldest son, Su Yuanhong, is married, his second son is named Su Yuanche, and he has a younger daughter named Su Sinai, who is 16 years old this year. The duke's wife should be trying to worry about her daughter, Chui explained. After explaining this, Su Juning understood. The mother and daughter talked for a while before Chui left the Cangyu pavilion. After Chui left, Su Juning took off her makeup and changed into a light and casual outfit. She hugged a soft pillow and went to the small bed by the window. Nanshu looked at her with a slightly tired expression between her eyebrows and eyes, so she brewed tea and brought it over. If Miss really doesn't want to go, she can either pretend to be sick or beg madam, but she can still avoid it. Nan Su comforted in a soft voice. However, Su Juning shook her head and said, my mother is right. I need to be prepared for the rain, and I still need to go and see this poetry fair. But I haven't returned to Beijing for a long time, so I'm afraid I don't know many things. You can go and inquire later, and see who will attend this poetry fair. Knowing oneself and the enemy, one will never be defeated in 100 battles. Upon receiving the order, Nanshu nodded and immediately went to handle it. 2 days later. Spring is still shallow, the cool breeze is gentle, carrying a chill. In front of the grand courtyard with high walls and red tiles, there is a wooden plaque with 4 big characters of the Duke of Rui's mansion written in hot gold paint. Dragons and phoenixes dance in a grand and majestic manner. 2 elegant and exquisite carriages slowly stopped in front of the mansion door. Only looking at the frame at the end, it was clear that the person sitting inside must be extraordinary. Today is the day for my wife to hold a poetry gathering, and all the guests coming and going to the mansion are distinguished guests. The gatekeeper dared not neglect and quickly welcomed them with a smile. Su Ziyi supported the hand of his maid Chu Yun, stepped on the stool, and slowly walked off the carriage. Wearing an ice blue silver patterned flower-gazing fairy dress, paired with a sheepskin jade head, elegant yet dignified, perfectly matched with her delicate and cold facial features. The expression in those phoenix eyes was too distant and indifferent, making people dare not approach. The servant nervously swallowed his saliva and quickly arched his hand, Miss Su. Su Ziyi nodded lightly, but did not hurry to leave. He then turned his head to look at the carriage following behind. From the carriage behind, a delicate maid with an oval face respectfully lifted the curtain of the carriage. Immediately after, a woman dressed in a long skirt with a golden thread of begonia and 100 butterfly patterns, gently swaying her waist and walking in lotus steps, got off the car. Su Juning has willow eyebrows like dye, red lips like fire. Compared to Su Ziyi's coldness, her facial features are more delicate and bright. Her charming yet not seductive aura is naturally formed, and her demeanor is elegant and graceful. The servant looked a bit dazed, but quickly reflected and hurriedly bowed his head and arched his hand. 2 days ago, there was news in Bianjing that the eldest daughter of the Su Yushi family had been brought back, so there was no need to think, it was naturally the beautiful woman in front of her. "Ladies, please come in. The banquet is set up in the back garden, and there will be a maid guiding you when you enter the mansion," he said in a gesture of greeting. Su Ziyi and Su Juning's sisters both nodded slightly, and then entered the Swiss government one after another. Following the maidservants in the government mansion, Su Juning calmly scrutinized the furnishings in the mansion. She knew that this mansion was originally an empty general's mansion, but she didn't expect it to be given to her uncle by Emperor Jianing to live in. Every blade of grass and every tree in the courtyard is taken care of excellently, with beautiful scenery and every step of the way. The servants who come and go are all behaving in a proper and polite manner, indicating that the head of the state mansion, Lady Xia, is a capable woman who is very skilled in domestic affairs. Not long after, when they arrived at the entrance of the garden where the banquet was held, the guiding maid stepped down. Many people have arrived at the scene, but the sisters did not enter directly, but first looked around at the entrance to see all the people coming to the poetry festival. Su Juning glanced around but didn't show any interest. "I was planning to be proactive, but I didn't have a noticeable goal." With a hint of resentment in his heart, he was about to say something when Su Ziyi beside him spoke up first. "Take a walk yourself, I'll go talk to Lady Qin and Wu." The stumbling in Su Ziyi's words made Su Juning instinctively follow her gaze and look forward. In the crowd, there was Qin Wan's figure. She has already married and needs to use her husband's surname externally. Su Juning felt a wave of regret in her heart and then nodded, Just as he was about to leave, Su Ziyi's footsteps paused again and he turned his head. "You keep your temper and don't argue with anyone casually." After finishing this sentence, without waiting for Su Juning's response, he left with his maid. Nanshu looked at Su Ziyi's back and leaned over to whispered, "Miss Air still cares about you quite a bit." "What a brain." Su Juning lightly poked the maid's head, "It's just that when we go out, we both prosper and suffer." Anyway, she didn't feel any real concern. Nanshu rubbed her forehead and then remained silent. Su Juning looked around and then spotted an empty pavilion to the west. "Let's go sit over there and avoid getting involved with them. We can't even be quiet." Thinking about her brilliant achievements in the battle with scholars in the past, she has almost been scolded by all the high school girls in the Bianjing city, and now there may not be many people who like to see her. Before coming, Cui also reminded her to be careful, so today she should listen and restrain herself. Nanshu nodded without any objection, realizing that her young lady was a bit lacking in interest today. She protected her from the crowd and headed towards the pavilion over there. This is really a secluded and good location, with a rockery blocking half of the way and trees planted on the other 3 sides, so no one should come over. Without any accidents, she is preparing to huddle here today and get rid of the poetry club. But when you can't think of unexpected things, you often can't get what you want. Su Juning had just sat down when she suddenly heard a sound of a branch breaking from behind her, followed by a muffled thud. It seems that a heavy object broke the branch and fell off the tree. The master and servant were startled and hurriedly turned their heads to look at the sturdy elm tree not far behind the pavilion. I saw a man with a silver crown and a black robe, half kneeling on the ground in a slightly disheveled state, with one hand supporting the ground and the other supporting his knee. "Damn it, treat kindness like a donkey's liver and lungs, and one day I'll take your old nest with me." The man recovered from the discomfort of falling from high altitude and opened his mouth with a foul word. Su Juning, who was startled by him, also leaned back and took a defensive stance, hesitating for a moment. Seeing the man looking up, as if cursing something on the tree, she instinctively looked up at the tree. But from her perspective, she can't see anything. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Those who recognize current affairs are heroes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Those who recognize current affairs are heroes. The master and servant remained silent as they watched, only to see the man scold and dust himself, then stand up and lift his left arm to examine. Su Juning only then saw that his left sleeve was torn, and a blood-stained cut by a tree branch twisted up his left back, indicating that the wound was not shallow. The man rolled up his sleeve to the bend of his arm and silently pulled out several wooden thorns that had been punctured in the wound. Then, with one hand, he pulled up the half of the tree branch that had fallen with him on the ground and threw it aside, blocking the way without saying a word. After finishing these things, he turned around as if nothing had happened, and Su Juning had not even had time to retract his gaze when he happened to bump into the man's eyes. It's him. Su Juning was stunned. Shen Qianwu was also stunned. He didn't expect to meet Miss Su from the Su family here, and his pupils immediately narrowed. So the disheveled appearance of him falling from the tree just now was all seen by someone. This woman wouldn't mock him, would she? Thinking of this, Shen Qianwu instinctively narrowed his eyes, with a naked exploration and coercion in his eyes. A layer of dim light floated in his amber eyes, like a wolf in the desert. Such a gaze made Su Juning's body tremble, recalling the brief gaze at the dock that day. For a moment, her waist and limbs became weak, and her heart began to tremble. Quickly turning his gaze to avoid Shen Qianwu's gaze, he seemed to have another thought in his heart, so he gracefully stood up and elegantly bowed. It seems that the young master is injured. Is it okay? I have a clean handkerchief. If you don't mind, you can use it for dressing. The girl's voice was delicate and soft, listening with only kindness and concern, without any hint of ridicule. Shen Qianwu also realized that his gaze seemed too fierce, coughed lightly, and withdrew his gaze. It's okay, it's just a minor injury. After speaking, he quickly walked away from the pavilion and disappeared behind the rockery. After he left, Su Juning lightly patted her chest and breathed a sigh of relief. She is a wise and talented person who knows the current affairs. When she couldn't fight, she lowered her head and looked at the person's eyes as if she wanted to eat or drink blood. I can't help roast about the family of this person. I have no taboo eyes on the lady in the boudoir. However, Su Juning did not relax for long. After a stick of incense, a little maid from the government came to find her. Seeing her, he obediently bowed. Miss Su, the poetry meeting at the flower garden has started. Our miss invites you over. Su Juning frowned slightly. She didn't know each other. Why did Miss Su send someone specifically to find her? What does that mean? Although she was puzzled, she came to the banquet today and couldn't refuse the invitation from her boss. He nodded and said, "Okay, you go first, I'll come." The maid withdrew from the pavilion in response, and Su Juning stood up with Nan Su's hand. Walking in the direction of the crowd, pondering whether the newcomer is an enemy or a friend. According to his mother, Emperor Jianing intended to propose marriage to the second son of the Su family and her second sister. The two families will be in marriage in the future, so they should not be enemies. But these ladies in Bianjing, their sisters, are still pinching each other. People are separated from each other, so we can't be totally unprepared. When Su Juning arrived, she saw everyone sitting in a circle, with a man on the left and a woman on the right, separated by a potted plant in the middle. Due to her striking appearance, she attracted the attention of many people from the moment she arrived. The astonishment of the young masters and the jealousy of the young ladies intertwined, making Su Juning the center of attention for a moment. For this situation, Su Xiaoxi, who didn't want to show off today, chose to ignore it, looked around, and casually found an empty seat to sit down. Not far away, Su Ziyi and Qin Wan sat together, with no available seats next to them. At first glance, they didn't intend to sit next to her, so they didn't even help her occupy a seat. Even so, she was too lazy to get along. But after she sat down, she always felt that among the many gazes at her, one of them was particularly prominent, making her slightly furry from behind. Looking up, it was indeed Shen Qianwu sitting diagonally opposite her, who had already changed his clothes. Su Yushi pursed her lips, thinking that Shen Qianwu was staring at her as a warning, afraid that she would reveal the recent incident and make him lose face. What a stingy man, rude and stingy. Su Yushi's stomach was full of slander, and she lowered her head not to look at him. But just now, this scene fell into the eyes of a woman at the table. Her gaze swept back and forth between Shen Qianwu and Su Yushi, and suddenly she smiled and spoke. This must be the younger sister of the Su family. I've heard that Miss C has a beautiful appearance. I saw her today and it was indeed like this. Suddenly named, Su Yushi looked up and followed the sound. I saw a young girl sitting in the middle of the seat, dressed in a lilac-colored dress, with a beautiful face and a calm temperament, looking at me with a smile on her face. Su Yushi quickly reviewed the little statues she had seen in the past few days in her mind, and combined with the girl's somewhat dominant posture, she quickly identified the identity of the talking girl. The daughter of the Duke of Rui, Su Sinai. After confirming the other party's identity, Su Yushi quickly smiled and nodded. Sister Su is joking. When I first returned to Bianjing, I heard my mother praise Sister Huilan for her intelligence, excellent piano skills, and extraordinary abilities. Today, I saw that Sister Su has an extraordinary demeanor, truly possessing both talent and beauty. Upon hearing her say this, Su Yushi felt embarrassed and waved her hand. I can't afford such praise. My younger sister is a wonderful person. Although it's the first time I've seen her today, I feel like she speaks very well. Su Yushi pursed her lips and smiled, then stopped speaking. However, when she tried to point it out, there were always people who didn't want to call her Rui. A slightly sharp female voice rang out during the banquet. Oh my, it's Miss Su who has a lot of face and can still talk to Miss Su C on a whim. Miss Su C used to ignore us, but after spending over a year in Linen, a remote and impoverished place, her temperament has changed. Su Yushi glanced sideways, and the person speaking was indeed one of her long-time rivals, Su Ruofu, the legitimate daughter of the Minister of Justice. Faced with her sour and unkind speech, Su Yushi calmly brushed off the non-existent dust on her sleeve and then curled her lips and smiled. Don't be so long, Miss Su's Tai Chi and gossip skills have improved over time. I feel inferior to her. Miss Su is so skilled that I can't keep up with her, so I naturally can't make a good deal out of it. Tai Chi Bagua. Su Ruofu heard these words and a series of question marks flashed through her mind. Until Feng Yao, the legitimate daughter of the left assistant minister of justice sitting next to her, whispered a reminder. She's saying you have a strange personality. Su Ruofu was annoyed upon hearing this and looked angrily at Su Yushi. Don't mock me, the Holy One hates Taoism. How dare you openly mention it? What is the Holy One in your eyes? And as she became more annoyed, Su Yushi's smile grew stronger. The person who practices this yin and yang martial arts is Miss Su. What am I afraid of? Since Miss Su has kept the words of the Holy One in her heart, she should have reformed early. If she really has the intention to practice, I heard that Jingquan Temple outside the city also accepts female disciples from secular families. Her tone was gentle, as if giving reasonable advice, making Su Ruofu so angry that she was about to slap the table. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Threats. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Threats. Feng Yao saw that Su Ruofu was about to lose her composure, so she quickly grabbed her sleeve and spoke out to smooth the situation. Miss Su C is still so witty and humorous, full of brilliant ideas. I believe today's poetry competition must be very exciting. As soon as she spoke, she interrupted Su Juning's approach and tried to bring everyone's thoughts back to today's topic. As the host, Su Sini naturally didn't want to see the legitimate daughters of two second-class nobles arguing in her own mansion, and immediately took up the conversation. Yeah, the theme of today's poetry fair hasn't been decided yet. Why don't we draw lots to determine the topic first, and then meet friends through poetry? She spoke up, and there was nothing wrong with the people on the stage, so she took the opportunity to expose the matter just now. Su Ruofu glared angrily at Su Juning, but had no choice but to give up. However, Shen Qianwu was somewhat surprised by Su Juning's eloquence. Just now, he thought that Su Juning, who looked delicate and gentle, was a soft persimmon. Unexpectedly, she became more powerful, with sharp tongues and even more infuriating than the imperial censor in the court. At that time, they were all pretending in front of him. This couldn't help but remind him of a joke his brother said, "Little girl, you have a lot of heart." Thinking of this, Shen Qianwu couldn't help but lower her gaze and chuckle lightly. On Su Juning's side, seeing that everyone had gathered around Su Sinai, she immediately made an excuse to change clothes and quietly left the banquet. She really doesn't want to get mixed up with this group of people. In no time, Shen Qianwu also found an excuse to leave. Like Su Juning, he also does not want to participate in this poetry gathering of Lao Shitzi. And his reason is even simpler, he doesn't know how to write poetry. Growing up in the military camp since childhood, he was able to read and write military books, but he couldn't understand these words that he had originally recognized by composing poetry. Sorry, he couldn't understand them anymore. After leaving the banquet, Su Juning wandered around the mansion and slowly walked to a remote place. Just as I was about to sit at the stone table in front of the rockery, I heard a burst of sobs from a woman behind the rockery. "Su Lang, I really have no choice. He always beats me, and the concubines and servants in the mansion also bully me. I listened to your words and told my mother, but she said, this is a marriage bestowed by the Holy Emperor, and we cannot divorce." Animal. The man's low and angry scolding came, "I'm going to beg my aunt. She's the queen, and there must be a way. If this continues, won't you be beaten to death by him? Auntie, Empress, Su Lang." Su Juning was taken aback in her heart. This is the young master of the Su family, who is also involved with a married woman. She doesn't want to get involved in this kind of other people's shinmi and instinctively wants to leave. However, as soon as she turned around, she found Shen Qianwu standing behind her, while Nan Su had been knocked unconscious and tilted to the ground at some point. "You, shut up." Before Su Juning could say anything, the next second Shen Qianwu let out a low shout and covered her mouth. Immediately, he pulled him over like a chick and pressed him against the clump of bamboo at the back. Shen Qianwu's movements were very rude, and Su Juning's face was painful from the calluses on her palms that had been worn out from years of martial arts practice. The hand that was gripping her arm was even more pitiful. Only to make Su Juning feel like a dry stick that can be easily broken in his hands. Such behavior immediately made Su Juning's heart skip 4 big words, killing and silencing. With a violent heartbeat, Su Juning's mind quickly thought of countermeasures. Suddenly remembering something, he lifted the other hand that had not been caught and spared no effort in gripping Shen Qianwu's left arm. I didn't expect the little girl to fight back in the movie. The wound on Shen Qianwu's left arm was in severe pain from being pinched, and her face immediately darkened. She released the grip on her hand. Su Juning held her chest in shock and gasped for breath. The fear and tension in her peach blossom eyes were still lingering, and her eyes turned slightly red, like a rabbit that had just escaped from a tiger's mouth. Seeing the young girl's appearance, Shen Qianwu unconsciously restrained some of his fierce aura. Immediately, he turned his head to the side and gestured for Su Juning to go in the direction he pointed to. "The enemy is strong and we are weak." Su Juning dared not disobey, carefully staring at Shen Qianwu while slowly walking away under his sheep-like gaze. After walking away a certain distance, Shen Qianwu spoke in a low voice with a hint of threat. What did you hear? I didn't hear anything. Su Jun was not foolish and immediately shook her head in agreement. If it weren't for witnessing this little girl's film and then squeezing his hard work, Shen Qianwu would have easily let her go. So at this moment, Su Juning saw Shen Qianwu roll up his left arm sleeve, revealing a section of his arm wrapped in a bandage, and there was a noticeable blood stain on the white bandage, not much, but glaring. Su Juning lowered her guilty eyes, knowing that it was something she had just pinched out. You're quite ruthless, Shen Qianwu glared at her. I was in a hurry for a moment, and I hope you can understand. In the spirit of the truth that little women can bend and stretch, Su Yushi immediately swayed his waist and bowed softly, his voice also soft, with a hint of caution. Shen Qianwu usually meets rough men and feels unhappy. He just punched them, but today when he met this girl, it was like punching cotton. Using softness to overcome hardness made him lose some breath in an instant. Especially Su Juning's gentle and polite demeanor made him reflect on whether he was really going too far. The little girl is fine. She was scared by him, but she didn't want to fight back. The rabbit was in a hurry and even bit people. Thinking of this, he once again restrained his sharp expression and went straight to the topic. No matter what you heard just now, I'll forget about it. If there's anything unpleasant coming out of the Duke's mansion tomorrow, I'll weigh the consequences myself. Su Juning pursed her lips and was suddenly threatened, feeling very unhappy in her heart. From childhood to adulthood, it was she who threatened others. Today, the situation was stronger than others. Although she had to bow her head, she also made a heavy note for Shen Qianwu in her heart. And from behind, he maintained a weak expression and let out a low, Seeing her wit, Shen Qianwu didn't want to talk much and turned around to leave. But just as he took a few steps, he heard a faint rustling sound of footsteps behind him. The martial artist had excellent ear power, so he immediately turned his head and saw Su Juning running slowly to follow. If you have farts, let them go quickly, Shen Qianwu said impatiently. Although Su Juning was nervous, she still spoke up, did you knock out my maid? You need to help me wake her up. Shen Qianwu was about to say that pouring a bucket of cold water would finish the job, but he heard the girl say again. If you don't help and someone discovers it, I can't explain why my maid was knocked unconscious in the government office. If anyone asks, Su Juning said with a hesitant expression. This is also a threat. Shen Qianwu squinted her eyes, and a sharp light flashed in her eyes. But then, without saying a word, he bypassed Su Juning and turned back. After finding Nanshu, he pinched her and followed her closely. Seeing Nanshu slowly waking up, he quickly ran over to help her up. She ran in a hurry, unaware that one of her red agate earrings had fallen off. Shen Qianwu's sharp gaze caught the earring, and he looked at the little girl who had just threatened her next to her, and couldn't help but snort coldly in his heart. Immediately, he calmly picked up the earring, pinched it in his palm, and left. Dare to threaten me, I'm so anxious about you. Shen Qianwu secretly slandered himself. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. No malicious intention. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. No malicious intention. Nanshu, wake up, how are you doing? Su Juning ignored Shen Qianwu as she left, gently shaking Nansu's arm with a worried expression on her face. After a moment, Nansu's eyes finally cleared up, and then she reached out to touch the back of her neck. Miss, it hurts so much. Someone hit me. I know it's all right now. Get up quickly. It's not suitable to stay here for a long time. Let's go quickly, Su Juning whispered. While pulling the person off the ground, the master and servant hurriedly left here. After walking further away, the two sat down at a stone table to calm their minds. Su Juning recounted what had just happened, and Nansu frowned as she listened. Yes. I also heard someone talking behind the rockery at that time, but I was suddenly knocked unconscious and didn't know anything. That man belongs to a certain family, and he just hit someone when he came up. It's so despicable. Speaking of this, Su Juning began to ponder deeply. If she befriended the Su family of the Duke of Rui and only then threatened her not to speak recklessly, she would probably be a member of the newly wealthy family in the court. At the age of 17 or 18, a military general with a low official position, and befriending the young master of the Su family, this information is enough for her to find out who this person is. Just as she was pondering who to ask, Nan Su suddenly exclaimed in surprise. "Ah, miss, why is your earlobe missing one?" "Ah." Su Juning's heart tightened and she hurriedly raised her hand to touch her earlobe, only to find that her left ear was empty. Lu Mei furrowed slightly and immediately stood up. "Maybe it fell somewhere. Hurry up and find it, you can't have someone pick it up. Jewelry, handkerchiefs, and other women's personal belongings, if picked up by malicious people, can make a big fuss. If their reputation is ruined, their life will be over. Although the situation may not be as serious, it is not pleasant to spread it to some extent." The master and servant first searched around and found none, so they quickly followed the original path back to the place they had just left. At the same time, Shen Qianwu was playing with the droplet-shaped red agate earring, with a slightly playful curve on his lips. Such a charming color really complements that little girl's film, she is more delicate than flowers. Suddenly, a lake blue figure flashed by and reached out to grab the earring. Shen Qianwu's figure flashed, quickly avoiding it and punching the person on the shoulder. The visitor felt pain and stopped, then raised his hand and rubbed his shoulder. "I don't know how to handle it lightly. Shit, I don't know who kicked me off the tree just now." Shen Qianwu snorted lightly, pinched the earrings back into his palm, and turned his hand behind him. Not as skilled as a person, but also with a temper, the young man in a lake blue robe raised his chin. Junyi's face carried a teasing smile. He is the youngest son of Emperor Jianing, the seventh Prince Xia Kong. He is 17 years old and 1 year younger than Shen Qianwu. Xia Tsong's biological mother was a singer of low status. After giving birth to him, she died of illness. Emperor Jianing did not care much for her little son. He was looked down upon by other brothers and sisters since childhood, and developed a withdrawn and paranoid disposition. When in Yanzhou, Shen Qianwu and he had a fight, but they didn't know each other. The two became good friends, so only in front of Shen Qianwu did Xia Tsong have a rare childlike side. "Does your arm still hurt?" Xia Tsong still asked with concern. Shen Qianwu shook his head and said, "Minor injury, it's not a problem. Not caring about it is mainly his own fault." Just now, the two of them sent the young birds that fell out of the nest back to climb the tree, but Shen Qianwu was very hesitant and joked that he should just take a nest back and bake it to eat, which was pushed by Xia Kong. "I accidentally fell off the tree and scratched my hand. However, for those who have grown up struggling in military camps since childhood, this small injury is indeed nothing." Seeing this, Xia Tsongkai glanced at his hand with a smile on his face and said, "Don't hide it. I've seen it all. Where did you get the earrings from? Which lady gave them to you?" "I picked it up." Shen Qianwu curled her lips and shook her earrings. Xia Tsong clearly didn't believe it, with a hint of amusement in his eyes. "Do you still pick up this thing? Did you get it from Miss Su of the Su family? I hate them for seeing you embarrass me." "Fart." Shen Qianwu scolded with a smile and grabbed Xia Tsong's shoulder vigorously. "It was really picked up, but it was indeed she who fell and I found it. That little girl's film is very bad and even dares to threaten people." The master made her anxious. Xia Tsong took his arm off his shoulder and said, "Don't play with it, that's the tip of Su Yushi's heart." "Don't worry, I have a plan." Shen Qianwu nodded. Upon seeing this, Xia Tsong didn't say much and only patted his shoulder. "You can play with it. Several imperial brothers are talking over there, and I need to show my face too. Shen Qianwu raised an eyebrow that he couldn't deny, and after he left, he picked up his hand and swayed towards the place where he was picking up the earrings. Sure enough, I saw Su Juning and his servants carefully searching for something on that small path. Shen Qianyun curled her lips, with a slight smile on her face. She immediately pinched her thumb and index finger into a circular shape and blew a crisp whistle on her lips. Su Juning, attracted by the sound, immediately looked up and saw a tall man standing not far away with his back in his hand, looking at her with a smile on his face. "Miss Su, is she looking for something?" Shen Qianwu asked knowingly. As soon as he spoke, Su Juning's heart suddenly became clear, and her pretty face darkened a bit. "I have lost my earrings. If the young master finds them, please return them." Seeing her unhappy expression, Shen Qianwu somehow felt even more tempted to tease her, so he revealed the earrings in his hand. "I did find one, but I don't know if it's Miss Su's." "That's my miss's, my miss has another one on her ear," Nan Su immediately said. And he stepped forward to protect Su Juning behind him, looking like a hen protecting her cubs. Shen Qianying didn't care about the precautions of the master and servant, just chuckled and shook his earlobe. "Okay, since it's yours, the master found it and returned it to its rightful owner. Do you have to thank him? What do you scholars call that, reciprocity, dot." Su Juning squinted her beautiful peach blossom eyes, not only showing no signs of annoyance, but also a slight smile on her face. In her eyes, Shen Qianyun's actions were like those stinky boys who deliberately caused trouble to attract the attention of girls they liked while studying. After all, if you really want to maliciously tease her, if you pick up something, you won't return it, so after all, it's not malicious, probably just to tease her. But who is Su Jiaojiao, a little fairy who has lived for 2 lifetimes, and can still be held by a rough boy? With a faint smile in his heart, he quickly swayed his waist and bowed to Shen Qianyun. "Thank you very much, young master. Juning is very polite now. She is truly beautiful, and her voice is like that of a oriole. At this moment, she deliberately holds a hint of seduction. Although it is a dignified and formal thank that you gift, it is hard to see a hint of seductive meaning, which makes Shen Qianwu dizzy." In his chest, his heart inexplicably pounded twice, and Shen Qianyun instinctively pounded his chest. Feeling guilty, damn it, did you just fall off the tree and have an internal injury? End of this chapter. Chapter 7. A Knife in the Back. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. A knife in the back. Ignoring his small movements, Su Juning had already come forward and quickly took his earrings from his open palm. "Hey, you!" Shen Qianwen regained his senses and found that the earrings were missing. He immediately stared, as he had not played enough. "Even if you thanked me." For his unwillingness, Su Juning just smiled back and asked in a coquettish manner as his youngest daughter. "I wonder which adult in the court is your father, young master?" "What is it?" For this convoluted question, Shen Qianwu didn't seem to respond for a moment. Nanxiu pursed her lips in silence and explained beside her, "Our young lady asked who your father is, young master." "That's not enough. It's a roundabout thing." Shen Qianwei secretly roast. However, he still held his face and waved his hand. "Of course I know. I need you to tell me, my father is General Mingwei Shenhe, and I am Shen Qianying." He didn't apply for his official position because the 6th grade official was too young, and he felt ashamed. These young people have very clear minds, so Su Juning doesn't expose them. She nodded slightly and said, "It turned out to be Prince Shen. Just now, Prince Shen knew my surname, so I won't introduce myself anymore. Today, I came with my elder sister in the family, but I haven't seen her for a long time. I believe my sister is worried, so I won't bother you anymore." After speaking, he gave Nan Su a glance, and the master and servant quickly left Shen Qianying behind. She's really a lady from a wealthy family. With so many words, she doesn't feel tired. Shen Qianwu looked at the slender back of the girl and chuckled lightly. I haven't been in contact with such a delicate young lady before. He just felt annoyed, but when I met Su Juning today, I just felt that she should be like this. Especially the Shen young master, how could he shout out from her mouth without causing any annoyance? Little did she know that on the other side, Su Jiaojiao immediately changed her face after leaving. Do you remember his family name and taboo? Ah. Nan Su was taken aback for a moment and immediately realized, Miss, you want to file a complaint. Just now, I saw that Miss was polite to that Shingongzi. Su Juning snorted lightly and said, that's you, Mississippi. I'm a good man. No, a good woman doesn't suffer immediate losses. Look at me, if I don't stick to him when I turn around, it's over. Upon hearing this, Nan Su silently lowered her eyes and sympathized with Shen Qianwu from the bottom of her heart. She just said, when did my young lady become so good-natured? She didn't get angry even if she provoked me to the bottom of her eyelids. She was actually preparing to stab me in the back. So the next day, General Shen, who returned from the next court, rushed towards the mansion with a whip in his hand. Shen Qianwu, you little bunny, come out of here. Let's see if I'll skin you today. Master, please extinguish the fire. What's wrong with this? Madame Shen frowned and quickly stepped out to stop someone, lifting her skirt. General Shen swung his whip and his thick eyebrows stood up. Madam, don't worry. This kid used to look honest, but I don't know who he learned from. He even teased the official family and bullied the legitimate young lady of the Su Yushi family. Today, those civil servants almost didn't make me feel embarrassed. Today, I must teach him a good lesson. Yanzhou blocked her husband while also frowning and wondering. I'm afraid there might be some misunderstanding here. Although Qianwu is a bit mischievous, he never does that kind of reckless apprenticeship. The education department and the brothel are completely untouched. How could he flirt with officials and their families? So why did Su Yushi intentionally squeeze me with this? It must be that little brat who did something good. General Shen was furious and opened his wife's hand, ready to continue walking inside. Yan couldn't resist the good words and immediately rolled her sleeve, grabbing her husband's ear. Can you try another, old man? Usually, you always say that Qianwu doesn't know how to behave properly. I think you, as an old man, got on the wrong side of the beam first. What can't be said properly, and when you come back, you shout and kill me. Do you still think this is in the military camp? If you want me to tell you, Qianwu came just like you, and in the future, he won't be able to change his personality. How can he marry a wife? Who's the young lady who won't walk around when she sees him? The Yan family, who comes from a merchant family, is not that ordinary woman. When it comes to being aggressive, Shen he dare not cause trouble. After a while, she will calm down. Okay, madam, don't be angry, I'll just say it right. Madam, be gentle, it hurts. Seeing that her husband was no longer rampaging, Yanzhou finally let go and straightened her clothes, taking on the demeanor of an official lady. Isn't it better for the master to be like this long ago? We have to make a fuss. If Qianying really did something wrong, the master wouldn't mind hitting me casually. Go and call the young master over. After speaking, he gave a command to the butler next to him, Lao Hifun. Not long after, Shen Qianwu, who was practicing boxing in his own yard, was called to the hall. Before the person entered the door, a shoe flew towards them. Shen Qianwu quickly caught him and fixed his gaze, only to see his father glaring at him in anger. I didn't know where I had made a mistake, so I didn't dare to force myself, so I playfully brought my shoes into the house and set them aside. Dad, what's wrong with being so grand? You still have the face to ask me, Shen he glared angrily. Did you bully the fourth miss of the Su family? Shen Qianwu was stunned for a moment, thinking back on what he had done. He felt that it was not related to bullying, at most it was just a teasing, so he shook his head. No, there isn't. No. That person, Miss Su, fell ill after going back to the banquet. In her nightmare, she even said in a daze, "Master Shen, forgive me." General Shen stared at him like a copper bell. As she patted the table in her hand, she said, "That little maid has already said that she was scared by you. She picked up someone else's earrings. What kind of gift do you want them to give you? What gift do you want them to give you? How could you act like a bandit and rob?" Shen Qianwu felt a tingling sensation on his scalp as he listened, and his heart immediately clarified. Pooh! He didn't believe that the little girl could be scared by him. She must have smiled in front of him and stabbed him in the back. When he was in Yanzhou, he was also the leader walking horizontally in the military camp, but now he has been defeated by a spoiled girl. If he doesn't tidy up and comply, he will falsely call him Shenyi. "Hey little bunny, I'm asking you a question. Where are you going?" General Shen shouted when he saw his son turn around and go outside. Shen Qianwu didn't turn his head back. "Isn't Miss Su a nightmare? I'll treat her." In the afternoon. Su Mansion, Sanyu Pavilion. On the rattan lounge chair under the corridor, Jiaonyang was dressed in a loose silver-white long dress, leisurely closing her eyes and recuperating. Afraid of the light shaking her eyes, she took a thin silk ribbon 3 fingers wide and draped it over her beautiful eyes, revealing only her pretty cheong nose and full and radiant red lips. On the side, Nan Su moved a small stool and sat beside Su Juning, carefully applying ko-dan to her delicate jade finger. The bright red on the nails further accentuates the woman's skin, like flawless white jade. At a comfortable moment, there was a faint sound of footsteps at the entrance of the courtyard, and even the sound of a second-class maid named Ji Chun could be heard. "Miss, General Mingwei's mansion has sent a gift, saying it's to apologize to Mississippi. There are still 2 chapters left at midnight. This book is still the same as before, both of which are updated at midnight. For those who have recommended tickets and monthly tickets, please vote for me. Thank you." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. 100 Grass Frost. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 800 Grass Frost. Upon hearing the 4 words, General Mingwei's mansion, Su Juning immediately opened her eyes. She tore off the ribbon that covered her eyes with her bare hand and sat up with Nan Su's hand. Seeing Ji Chun holding a beautifully carved brocade box in her hand, she raised her eyebrows lightly and waved. "Bring it to me for a look." Sending a spring response, walking forward and opening the brocade box. Unexpectedly, upon opening it, there was a stack of yellow talisman paper drawn with red cinnabar, resembling something used to ward off ghosts. At first glance, it was clear that Shen Qianwu was deliberately teasing her, and Su Juning's face immediately turned cold. "Take it away quickly, what unlucky thing. Don't stain Mrs. eyes." Nan Su quickly waved her hand. Ji Chun also had a nervous expression, who knew that such a beautiful brocade box would contain such a thing. She hurriedly took 2 steps back, and just as the wind blew by, the yellow talisman paper in the box scattered all over the ground, revealing a paper package below that seemed to be medicine, and a white letter with words written on it. "Wait." Su Juning stood up angrily. "Quickly walk over and take out the paper from the box to see." I saw the rough handwriting of a man on top, which read, "By Chao Shuang treats all kinds of diseases. If the talisman paper burns and is useless, you can take this medicine to relieve Miss Su's nightmare." By Chao Shuang. What is it? Su Juning frowned. She had never heard of such a medicinal herb. Ji Chun knew it, pursed her lips, and whispered, "As for Miss Hui, By Chao Shuang is the bottom ash of the pot." Shen Qianwu. Upon hearing these words, Su Juning immediately angrily crumpled the paper in her hand and threw it out. Is this crude warrior really going on endlessly with me? If it were an ordinary person, he would cherish his face and honestly apologize. He is so lucky that he dares to come. He is truly shameless and shameless. Nanshu quickly took a handkerchief to wipe Su Juning's hands, while gently persuading. Miss, don't be angry. The newly dyed Ko Dan is useless. He is a rough warrior with a thick face. Miss, don't argue with him. It's just that you're angry. Let's ignore him. Sujuan would rather stomp her feet, although not angry, but she was too lazy to argue anymore. Shen Qianwu's approach to her was to punch cotton, and even his anger dissipated. However, Su Juning's move against Shen Qianwu was not like a scholar encountering a soldier. Nan Su asked Ji Chun to pick up and throw out the things, and then brought many of Su Juning's favorite dim sum fruits. On the other hand, Shen Qianwu had been waiting for that delicate girl to fight back. There had been no movement for 2 or 3 days in a row, and his heart was still empty and tasteless. Boss, what are you thinking? Go on patrol. Zheng Han approached and used his arms to push him. In recent days, several performing troops have arrived in the capital city of Bian. There are more people gathering to watch the acrobatics, and there are also many thieves. Recently, many have reported to the government. The higher-ups have called on us to send more personnel and strengthen patrols. Shen Qianwu held a bamboo stick in his mouth and didn't pay much attention. A few little thieves, we'll catch them all today, he said upon hearing his words. Another small guard next to him also approached. It's not just a thief. Stealing things is a small matter, and even trafficking people. Children and girls, who are easy to get started with, have also lost a lot. It's because of this that they spoke up. Otherwise, it's just a small theft, just hand it over to the Ministry of Justice. Who would come to our Ministry of War's urban defense camp to transfer people? We're afraid of public opinion fluctuations, and the Yamen has been under pressure all along, without outsiders knowing. Human trafficking is a capital crime in the laws of Beijing. If the emperor's feet are so restless, the people's hearts will be in turmoil, which will be detrimental to the credibility of the court and also affect the face of the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of War. So this matter is highly valued by both the Shangshu. Shen Qianwu's eyes have been fixed on the Su mansion these days, but he didn't care about these things. When he heard about it, he frowned and spat. These bastards, their conscience has been eaten by the dog, and they dare to earn money from any means. Don't even think about it. Those children and women who were caught must have been sold. It's okay to sell them to others as children or as slaves. They may have better looks and will be sold into the kiln. Harmful to others. The group put on their swords, led their horses, and immediately set out to patrol the streets. There is no curfew in Bianjing, and the market is the busiest at night. It's dark and easy to get started, so everyone is energized. At that time, at the entrance of Su Mansion, several young masters and ladies from the Su family are preparing to go to the night market. Today, Su Juning mentioned that there is a curfew at the old house in Linen. She hasn't been to the night market for a long time, so Su Yugue, the big brother, waved his hand and said to take her for a stroll. Of course not just the two of them, I also called Su Zi and Su Yuan. However, Su Ji didn't like to join in the fun and refused, so in the end, Su Yugue and Su Yuan accompanied Su Juning out. The two brothers rode horses, while Su Juning rode a car all the way to the busiest East Street. After leaving the horses and carriages in a designated place, the three of them were escorted by servants and maids to the market. The three of them had outstanding looks, especially Su Juning, who was protected by two older brothers in the middle. She was even more charming and attracted the attention of many passers-by. But looking at the decent attire of the few people and the constant guards of the servants, it is clear that they are not ordinary young masters, so ordinary people only look around and dare not approach. Third brother, look, is there a lamb patty selling over there? Su Juning's eyes lit up and she tugged at Su Yuan's sleeve. She seemed to smell a fragrance. Su Yuan is taller than her. She looked up and nodded with a smile, yes, there's a mother-in-law selling. Your nose is sharp. Are you craving it? Let's go buy a few and try them, Su Yushi said, shaking his folding fan and smiling. Su Juning nodded and smiled, holding the arms of her two brothers one by one. Not to mention anything else, these two brothers are really good. Looking. In her previous life, she didn't have the blessing of being surrounded by handsome guys, but in this life, she has always wanted to earn them back. Both Su Yuqian and Su Yuan have become accustomed to the actions of their younger sister. This girl has been like this since she was young. She can act coquettishly and attract people's pain. Although she is about to reach adulthood now, she is still a little girl in their eyes. The three siblings were talking and laughing while buying cakes, while not far away, in a dark alley next to a tea house, several men and women dressed in ordinary people were looking over here. That girl looks pretty good. If she can handle it, the money she sells will be enough for us to stop for a while, the man in charge sighed. Another person interrupted hastily, you're not going to die anymore. It seems like you're a lady from a prestigious family. We can't afford to provoke you. Miss, I can't do it, can't I do a maid? Look at that little maid, she looks very beautiful. These wealthy families are most famous for her reputation. If her personal maid is kidnapped, she must not say a word. One of the women pointed at Nanshu and made a sound. The man in charge squinted his eyes and said, Huinyang is right. Recently, the government has been cracking down heavily, and there have been more officers and soldiers patrolling the streets. After we finish this big battle, we will leave Bianjing. The provincial government will be in trouble here. After a few people met and reached a consensus, they immediately dispersed. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Abduction. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Abduction. Miss, there seems to be a team playing various roles over there. Shall we go and take a look? Nan Su followed Su Juning's side, her eyes bright. For Su Juning, who has seen more exciting performances in later generations, the performance of this 100 drama troupe is naturally not attractive, but it is rare to come out. Seeing the little maid eagerly, she agreed. So a few people walked towards the crowded area. At this moment, a little girl wearing a double bun quickly ran towards several people holding a bowl, and collided directly with Nan Su's body. Oh my, it's so hot. Nanshu let out a painful cry and quickly pulled up her waist clothes with one hand, while the other hand quickly fanned the wind. A small wooden bowl was still rolling on the ground, and the little girl carrying the bowl fell and sat on the ground. Sorry, by comparison, sister, spare my life. I didn't mean to, woo-woo. As she spoke, the little girl began to cry, as if she had also been frightened. She wiped her tears with her small hands and cried uncontrollably. Su Juning frowned and gave a glance to the servant next to him, asking him to help the little girl up before whispering softly. Don't be afraid, you're not injured, why are you running so quickly? For the bare child, Su Juning is also unhappy, but the little girl immediately apologized after falling, which made her less angry. The little daughter shook her head and before she could speak, she saw a thin woman in plain clothes hurriedly pushing her way through the crowd. Seeing Su Juning in his group, their faces were startled and they immediately knelt down. Please forgive me, the daughter of the commoner did not mean it. This bowl is not dirty, it is the medicine that the commoner just prepared to give to her husband. I believe it must have burned this girl, right? The child is young, if she has any anger, she will come to me. Please forgive the child. Nanshu looked at the pitiful mother and daughter, and the little girl didn't seem to be on purpose, so she waved her hand. It's okay, it's okay. Get up quickly, I'm not worried. The woman gratefully thanked me and then said, this medicine is very hot, I'm afraid it might burn the girl. My husband has set up a stall over there selling some herbs and his own ointment. Why don't the girl come with me? I'll take some for the girl, which can be considered a little apology from me. Nan Su looked at Su Juning in embarrassment. She is a close maid, and without the consent of her master, she cannot leave casually. Su Juning looked in the direction pointed by the woman and indeed saw a middle-aged man setting up a stall over there, so she nodded. You go, your clothes are also wet. Go back to the horse carriage to handle it before you come. My brothers and I will be together, it's okay. Nanshu nodded, bowed, and then followed the woman over. The bowl of medicine was poured firmly on her body, which was truly painful to burn. There was also a strong smell of medicine on her clothes, which was unpleasant and tight. On this side, Su Juning didn't walk far either. She stood at the side where she was watching the acrobatics, occasionally looking back to take a look at Nan Su's situation. For some reason, she always felt that the mother and daughter looked a bit strange, but couldn't figure out what was strange for a moment, just uncomfortable. But seeing Nanshu talking to the family of three, it seemed like nothing was wrong, so I didn't think much about it. After only a while, when Su Juning turned around again, she saw that Nan Su's figure was missing from the stall, while the man who was setting up the stall was packing his things and looking like he was about to leave. Something's wrong. At this time, when there are many people in the night market, how could the stall be closed at this time? Su Juning's gaze immediately swept around, and she saw a faint green hue flickering into the dark alley next to the tea house not far away. Nanshu's clothes are lush green and in good condition. Why go to that place? Big brother, third brother, quickly send someone to stop the man selling herbs. He has a problem, Nan Su is missing. Su Juning said decisively. Su Yuqian and Su Yuan were watching the acrobatics with great interest. When they heard this, they were both shocked, but they immediately sent their servants to chase after them. As expected, the man who was closing the stall saw the servants of the Su family rushing towards him, and without saying a word, he threw away his belongings and ran away. This time, even a fool can tell there's a problem. Su Juning felt anxious and just saw someone patrolling the corner from the government, so she immediately shouted loudly. Catch the thief! There's a thief, hurry up and catch the thief. Shen Qianwu was riding a horse while patrolling when he suddenly heard the shout and immediately led someone to ride his horse and run towards him. I was surprised to see that Su Juning was shouting, but since it was official business, he still asked seriously. Where is the thief? Over there, we're running over there, and our servants are also chasing after us. Su Yugue stepped forward and answered. Shen Qianwu's gaze swept and he saw a man running wildly in the crowd, about to drive his horse to chase after him, but was stopped by Su Juning. There is more than one of them in the dark alley over there in the tea house. It seems that my maid has been kidnapped by them. Please help me, Lord Shen. After speaking, Su Juning quickly bowed to him. Nan Su grew up with her when she was young. She was a sister's. She was really anxious at the moment. Shen Qianwu didn't expect that Miss Su Juning, who was as delicate as Su Juning, would really care about the life and death of a maid. She looked at her with renewed admiration. So he gestured to Zheng Han, you go chase that person, I'll go to the other side. After speaking, he quickly chased towards the dark alley with a horse's belly sandwiched between his legs. Due to this sudden riot, several acrobatic troops around have also stopped, and a large number of people watching the acrobatics are pushing to leave these trouble spots as soon as possible, fearing that they will also be robbed. Because half of the servants were sent out to chase people, the three siblings of the Su family were escorted by the remaining four servants to the place where the carriage was parked. However, at this time, the situation was too chaotic, and the people were crowded, but they didn't care about the situation. Unexpectedly squeezed people apart. Su Juning was petite and quickly separated from her two older brothers due to the influence of the abortion. She struggled to push through the crowd and stood in the corner of a cloth shop, her body tightly pressed against the wall, not letting herself be carried forward by the crowd anymore, and tiptoed to look at the positions of her two brothers in the crowd. Second brother, look, isn't this the lady from earlier? In the crowd, a man with a short stature had golden eyes and vigorously patted the person next to him. The middle-aged man who was called the second brother by him also saw the baby's appearance. It's really heaven's help. Taking advantage of the chaos, let's also kidnap this young lady. It's good to have their masters and servants as companions. The next second, Su Juning saw two men rushing towards her, covering her mouth and dragging her away without hesitation. Su Juning widened her eyes in terror, struggling to kick and fight with all her might, but in the face of absolute pressure, her small movements were of no use. Quickly dragged into another dark alley by two men. A carriage was parked here, and one of them stuffed Su Juning into the carriage and tied his hand, while the other drove quickly towards the direction of the city gate. Su Juning's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. She didn't expect to encounter such a thing when she first returned to Bianjing, saying that she wasn't afraid was false. We can only find ways to protect ourselves first, and then slowly find opportunities to escape or wait for rescue. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Escape. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Escape. She looks really handsome. The man guarding Su Juning in the carriage lit a fire and looked at him with that little light. There was a nauseating greed in the eyes. Su Juning stared at him guarded, forcing herself to remain calm and speak up. I have no grudges or grievances with you two. I believe you both arrested me for wealth. My entire body of gold and jade jewelry is worth several hundred taels of silver. If you don't think it's enough, you can write to my family to ask for it. My father is the left censor of the Imperial Inspectorate and a second-rank official. I am the legitimate daughter, and my parents love me. No matter how much you want, they will definitely give me, as long as you ensure my safety. After hearing her report the door, the man's eyes flickered, but soon became cold and fierce again. I'm really a high-ranking official, but if I sell you, you can still get a good price. Why take this risk? If the government catches you, it won't be worth the loss. You can't sell me, Su Juning said with a firm tone as she raised her chin. The man squinted and said, I've been in this business for so long, and I can't do anything about taking pictures of you, little girl. It's not that there's nothing I can do, it's that there's nothing I can do with the city defense camp, Su Juning said in a deep voice. I came out with my two brothers. If something happens in the city and I get separated, they will report to the authorities and immediately block the city gate. If you can't leave this Bianjing city, there's no place in Bianjing city to dare to buy me. Seeing the other person's thoughts in their eyes, Su Juning quickly continued. And if I'm not mistaken, the people who kidnapped my maid are also with you. Some officers and soldiers have already gone to chase them separately. If we catch them, we will definitely be able to find you. If you haven't left the city yet, there will be a dead end. But as long as you are willing to let me go, I have a waste token to leave the city. Take it, just say it's a servant of the Su family. The defending officers and soldiers will definitely let you go, and you can still escape. Pooh, second brother, don't listen to this little girl's nonsense. She has a waist tag, let's take her waist tag and take her with us. The man driving outside scolded. The people inside the carriage had more brains and shouted at the outsiders. You're stupid, take her with you. There's no hiding place in this car, can the defenders be blind or not? The first one to catch you and chop you down. The outsider remained silent in frustration, while the man inside looked at Su Juning again. Why should I believe you? If the brothers can't run away today, they can enjoy you and then kill them, taking money and running for their lives. Su Juning pursed her lips and said, if you kill me, you will definitely not escape the wanted by the government. Don't forget that your accomplices are being pursued, and once they are caught, you won't be able to escape. If you take the money, you won't be able to spend it for nothing. Besides, I am a lady in the brothel, and I have the highest reputation. I will never let anyone know that I have been abducted, otherwise it will damage my reputation and I will only cause people to despise me. So I will keep it a secret, and I will definitely send you out of the city without letting you be caught. This sentence really moved the man's mind. Indeed, nowadays a woman's reputation is more important than her life, especially the young lady of this prestigious family. This is not a lie. At this moment, the carriage suddenly stopped, and the man driving outside had a slightly nervous voice. Second brother, what should we do? There are officers and soldiers searching ahead. Upon hearing these words, Su Jun immediately said, how about you let me go? I'll give you all the valuable things on my body, and then let you hold my waist tag to avoid being searched and leave the city. The man gritted his teeth and lifted the car curtain to take a look outside. Not far away, there were indeed officers and soldiers holding torches and carefully searching every passing carriage. After putting down the car curtain, the man silently untied the rope that bound Su Juning. Don't play any tricks on me, quickly give me everything. Su Juning felt a chill behind her back and didn't dare to relax at all. Firstly, he took out the Su family waist tag from his arms and handed it to the man. Then he began to remove the gold hairpin, jade hairpin, candlelight, earrings, necklace, a pair of jade bracelets on his hand, as well as the 2 jade pendants hanging from his waist. He even tore off the pearls on his shoe surface. A small mountain has been piled up. The man took out a cloth bag, put all of this in, and roughly pushed Su Juning off the carriage. Su Juning's legs were so weak that she couldn't stand steadily, so she fell and sat on the roadside. This road was an unpaved dirt road, and she felt her palm pressed against the wet and soft mud. But at this moment, she didn't care about it, panting heavily and trembling all over. It's okay, it's okay. Only this thought in her heart supported her to slowly calm down from the fear and tension she had just experienced. Suddenly, a sound of horse hooves came. Su Juning was lost in thought, and the man who rode over had already dismounted and stood in front of her. Under the bright moonlight, Shen Qianwu met the girl with scattered hair in her eyes, looking at herself with lingering fear. Her small face turned slightly white due to fear, and her originally rosy lips also lost their color. Like peonies swept by frost, it's heartbreaking. Shen Qianwu frowned tightly, untied his cloak, draped it over Su Juning's shoulder, and pinched her wrist to pull her up from the ground. But Su Juning had not yet regained her composure, so she couldn't stand firm even when she was pulled up. As soon as her legs softened, she was about to fall again. Shen Qianwu quickly helped her lower back with his eyes and hands, and only then did he ask her to stand still. Are you okay? Why are you here? Shen Qianwu said in a deep voice. Su Juning sniffled, and the feeling of wanting to cry when she suddenly saw someone she knew and never died suddenly surged up. It took a lot of effort to hold back, tears swirling in my eyes, and I struggled. That carriage, 2 middle-aged men, and the person who caught Nanqiu were in the same group. They robbed me of valuable items and took my waist tag to sneak out of the city. Hurry up and catch them. Shen Qianwu looked in the direction she pointed, and the carriage she mentioned was no longer there. He thought it had already passed, but his eyes darkened. Wait here, I'll be right back. Leaving this sentence behind, Shen Qianwu half used his lightness skills and quickly went to the group of officers and soldiers, seemingly giving orders before turning back. With this effort, Su Juning had already calmed her mind. When Shen Qianwu returned to her face, she solemnly bowed. Thank you very much for Lord Shen's help. Is my maid okay? Shen Qianwu nodded and said, I have already saved someone and sent them back to your mansion. What about you? What should I do now? I'll take you back. Su Juning originally wanted to refuse, but thinking of her current disheveled appearance and having no idea where she was, she could only let Shen Qianwu give her a farewell. However, he doesn't have a carriage, how can he deliver it? So Su Juning said, then please trouble Lord Shen to call a carriage for me. The cost of silver will be double and I will send it to Lord's mansion tomorrow. Upon hearing these words, Shen Qianwu curled her lips and smiled. What kind of carriage is it called? I'll ride a horse to see you off. I'm afraid even the city of Bianjing will know about your robbery by thieves tomorrow. After speaking, without waiting for Su Juning to answer, he grabbed her waist with both hands and, like lifting a little doll, put her on the back of a horse. He quickly flipped over and got on the horse, sitting behind her and holding her in his arms. End of this chapter.